Welcome to Flourishing Unfiltered, the podcast for high achievers who seek a professional life that feels as good as it looks.
We talk about the unseen journey of struggles on the path to success that people rarely talk about.
I'm Kieran Smith, positive psychology and leadership coach and consultant.
And I'm Dr Monika Hein, positive psychology and self-leadership speaker and consultant.
Before we begin today, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we're recording. We pay our deepest respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
As we share our stories today, we honour the rich tradition of storytelling that has been passed down through generations.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Future of Flourishing, a futures thinking media, training and venture lab dedicated to bridging the gap between scientific knowledge and practical application in the field of human flourishing.
The Future of Flourishing is committed to creating a comprehensive ecosystem of communication and innovation platforms. Find out more about the Future of Flourishing at futureofflourishing.com.
If you enjoy our podcast, please leave us a review. It would mean the world to us.
Now today it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr Monika Hein. Monika is an expert for voice and personal presence. She embodies her subject as a fabulous keynote speaker and executive coach. Now Monika originally studied musical theatre and only later on took further studies to investigate the phenomenon of the human voice in the subject of phonetics. Now, she's been self-employed as a speaker, trainer and coach since 2004. And amongst her clients are actors, speakers, presenters, teachers, executives, lawyers, you name it. She's got them as her clients. Now, Monika's worked in the field of voiceover as well in the areas of dubbing, product and image films, as well as in advertising. She draws on this wealth of experience in her lectures and trainings, which are enthusiastic, well-founded and inspiring. Now, Monika has also not published one, but 4 books. And her latest book is called Speak Up and Shine, through which she empowers women to overcome barriers in confident speaking by integrating vocal empowerment with psychology and coaching insights, helping them discover their inner strength and achieve impactful communication in both professional and personal contexts. And on top of that, Monika is an extremely humble and wonderful human being. Monika, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Wow, I'm blushing.
Well, that's great because I've only known you for a few weeks, really, and we personally met recently through a German mentoring platform, and we've since created our own little mastermind, haven't we? Now, Monika, I am super eager to delve into your motivation to pursue this career in vocal empowerment. What inspired you to start your own business in this field?
Well, this is not an easy answer actually, because it was like a road that led me to that. I started out, as you mentioned, in musical theater, so I was trained for acting, singing, and dancing. But for quite a while, I had confidence issues on stage, so I always doubted, questioned myself, and stuff like that. So I know how it feels to feel insecure on a stage. And this is how my studies kind of then contributed to making people feel safe on stage by using their voices, by using their personal presence. So I kind of used the techniques for myself and for my clients as well. So I love to empower people to speak up for themselves and to be present on stages, and whatever stage it is. It can be a personal stage or a business stage.
Yeah, that's incredible. I had no idea, to be honest. Are you comfortable sharing how come that you had those self-doubts on stage?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was very young at that point. I mean, like 21, first of all, I had this big life dream. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be on stage. I love musical theater. I love the musicals like Hair and Les Miserables and you know, all these wonderful pieces. And they gave me goosebumps, they gave me a goal. And then I started to study and I found out that this business was full of very confident people. Like people coming on a stage and being all about themselves and very strong and powerful. And it kind of intimidated me to see that, because I wasn't raised as a person to feel like the best always, or the greatest, or the loudest, or whatever. So for me it's always about a process of learning, not so much about the like the impact or the loudness in the moment. So yeah, I kind of felt wrong on that, in that school, on that space. And when you feel wrong, I learned now as I'm 50, I've learned to leave areas where I don't feel safe. So I didn't feel safe in that area, and so I left musical theater. First, it was like a big pain to leave it, to actually not go for my life goal. But I'm so happy about it today because it turned out just the right way. But yeah, this is how it goes. After the pain comes the joy.
That's incredible. And I'm so glad to hear that, you know, there is no regret, that you actually feel like that path has led you to where you're meant to be. And I have to say, part of the reason as to why I'm so surprised to hear this is because, you know, I've stalked you. Confession time. I've gone through your website, YouTube, wherever I could find you. And I've been listening and watching your talks. And I mean it when I say they're incredible. Your stage presence and obviously your voice, but you go, okay, it's a job. But it's like, it's so mesmerizing and you're so calm. And it feels as though you're exactly in your element. So I'm having a really hard time believing that you used to have self-doubts.
Well, I still do sometimes. So I think it's a very human thing. And it's interesting how the picture that others have of us and our self-image sometimes is not congruent. So we have to grow into that. And I think now in my like older years and a lot of experience, I come to slowly believing all that. But, you know, when I was younger, I had no idea. I really had no idea about how my picture comes to the outside world. And so I had the doubts were kind of stronger than the belief, like in the feedback of people. So I was always in my head and thinking and doubting and, you know, all that stuff. So this is my personal journey to actually raise my voice and to develop my voice and to actually conquer stages after all. And that was like, it never kind of left me that I wanted to do that. And the way of performing is different now.
This is incredible. And as Mike has sort of explained to you, you know, if anyone pops your name in Google, they're going to see a very confident person speaking on various different platforms. And for many of our listeners, you know, they're tuning in because they're keen to hear the behind the scenes, you know, the struggles that, you know, were happening behind the scenes that got us to that point. Because we know that it's not always sunshine and butterflies, that, you know, there's hard times and there's difficult things that we need to navigate. Curious to know, you know, in this, you know, the early days or even to this day now, have there been times when you've sort of questioned a lot of what you're doing and why you're doing the work? Or, you know, as Micah sort of mentioned, you've got a breadth of different clients that you work with. Has there been any times maybe that you've maybe not felt good enough or not qualified enough to be able to work with these people?
Yeah, it comes and goes actually. So it's interesting. The higher in the level the people are, like if they are in sea level, it's a different story. But I love to do the work with them nowadays because it's like an intellectual, battle in terms of like we can really like throw the balls and like, is that a good term to use? But in German we say that to really get into a very good intense exchange of experience. But earlier days when I heard that like a CEO came to book me, I was like, ooh, really? What can I offer this person? Because this person is so high up in hierarchy. Now I felt so small. So I really know how it feels to have this imposter syndrome, to actually hear inner voices that keep nagging and telling, oh, you might appear stupid or you might not be good enough for that client, of course. And that kind of, it really is, it comes with the shifts. I felt that because I was training musical theater actors and actresses for my start of the career. And then I shifted into business. So I shifted into training people for presentations and stuff like that. So since I had never worked in a in an organization. I felt like a fraud because I was in the organization teaching people, but I had only been in theater life. So of course, whenever those shifts appear into a higher level of work, then all of a sudden you feel like, oh my God, do I belong here? Is it good enough? And so you kind of develop your skills with every shift. This is how I felt.
I love that. So much personal growth in that. And, you know, it's like you get comfortable in one space. Of course, you start growing beyond that. And of course, you start to feel out of place yet again and, you know, have to face those fears. I'm curious how you navigated that imposter syndrome, if you will, or those self-doubts, feeling not good enough, feeling so small when they were at such a high level. How did you navigate that? What helped you to cope?
I'm not even sure about that because I think I'm addicted to learning. So whenever I feel like there's a shift that I cannot really conquer, I felt like I had to read, to go to a training or to see TED Talks or get inspiration. And get inspired to grow rather than to go into the self-doubt. Even though it's there, we can still act and we can still be active. And so I think fear is only a problem when it kind of makes us stiff and not able to move. So I think moving forward was always like my secret weapon against the imposter voice. And so I think that's how I did it, reflecting backward, because I call myself like a junkie for learning, and this is, I think, how I always did it.
Oh, you're in good company there. Two fellow junkies. Sorry, go ahead, Karen, go on.
Absolutely. And I was just about to try and steal some insights here too, Monika, because, I'm sitting here going, all right, where does someone with a resume as impressive as yours go to learn more? So I'm curious, have you got maybe a book or a talk or something that you've engaged with recently that you found really insightful?
Or a mastermind?
Yeah, oh yes, of course. A mastermind with this brilliant Mike Neuer. Actually, I can mention a lot of influences in my life. For example, I follow Brené Brown's work, which I really love. I think this is just brilliant stuff that she's doing and researching. So I'm always like keen on having people with substance, so they really go into science. And it's not so much about the loud ones. I don't really care about that, even though I train voices, but I love substance as well. So there needs to be like some evidence or proof, or this is how I tick. So I really love people who are into science and working with that field. And one book that I recently read in the research for my latest book was called Not Nice by Dr. Aziz Gazipura. He's an US-American author. And it's like 500 pages about how being nice differs from being real. Because people are nice because they are afraid to speak up and be cruel or rude in a way. So we kind of say yes to things because we don't want to disturb other people. And he says the opposite of being nice is not being an asshole all of a sudden, but the opposite of being nice is being real. And I really love that. And this kind of stuck to me very deeply.
Oh, how interesting. Yeah, it sounds like from people pleasing to being authentic and saying what you really think, which we can still do in very respectful ways, have boundaries, honor boundaries, communicate boundaries, and so forth. Super interesting. And I love that you mentioned Brené Brown, because when you were speaking before about not letting fear immobilize you, I was straight away trying to think of her quote, but I'm never very good with quotes. I always change them because I don't remember them fully. But it was her who basically said, having courage is not feeling any fear, but it's like feeling the fear and doing it anyway, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she also talks about shame, and I think shame is a very, very important topic that we all need to embrace more. And really, she says when we put shame into light, it can disappear, but if we hide it, it will grow. And I think shame about that, this is like what you guys talk about, like how we fail, how we struggle, how we move on, and stuff like that is so important. And it's even maybe dangerous to only see the glamourful and strong and confident side of a person.
Oh, I agree. I think it's so dangerous and so damaging. And I don't even want to imagine how many people give up because they think they're the only ones who are just not good enough, who are clueless, who don't get enough clients, who are too broke to continue or whatever that might be. So, yeah, absolutely resonates with me. What are maybe some of the biggest lessons you've learned along your journey?
Ooh, deep question. Well, I learned about myself that this movement forward, especially in COVID, we all struggled with income in COVID, for example, when all of a sudden all clients broke away and then we had no income basically. And this was maybe the greatest lesson because I switched my business into online business, so online coaching. Like I learned it from scratch how to create a course and how to do all that, and I think that was my greatest lessons in the last couple of years, to actually, even though the crisis might be like huge, you can still, if you get your guts together, and then you can actually survive this. And I learned a great deal of that, and altogether I think I learned that it's safe to leave places where you don't feel comfortable, and it's always good to listen and respect the inner voices that are there, but don't believe every single voice inside of you, because some of them are just telling you crap and not acknowledging your worth. And I think that is a thing that I'm still learning every day, to kind of empower myself. And this is what we need to do when we are freelancing or on our own with our own businesses.
And I would love to just tap into this a little bit more, because you spoke previously about the notion of imposter syndrome and the toll that can sort of take. I feel as though many of our listeners would be very curious to know, is there anything that you do, like any specific strategies that you use to help balance out those voices in our heads that might creep in when that self-doubt's there? Is there a tip or tool that you use in that space?
It's interesting that you say tool, because actually I've been following Phil Stutz and Barry Michaels from The Tools. I don't know if you heard of them. It's an approach from the US, and the tools are like micro, really tiny meditations or imaginations to get yourself in a different state. And I've been working with the tools and doing some lectures with the tools teachers in America. And I developed my own imposter syndrome tool. So I'm working with that because the tools from Phil Stutz, they are these pictures like flow of gratitude, for example, when you feel angry. That you close your eyes and you imagine that your heart is being filled up with gratitude, and you imagine that, and then you kind of start to feel it, and so your whole state is being turned around by those little micro meditations or imaginations. And so as the imposter syndrome, for me, when I felt it recently, actually, I felt it was like a curtain, like a big theater curtain that is between myself and my knowledge and all the things that I've done so far. So it kind of separates me from actually the things that I can do. So I felt like closing my eyes and really pushing that curtain away to actually see what I have achieved so far, what I can do, what I learned, how I actually sorted my life out. So you really look at that space and you see that, and the imposter kind of draws the curtain, so you are separated. And so this is my trick recently, that I felt like I have to actively push this curtain away and really look at my life.
Oh, what a beautiful tool.
Yeah. I love it too, actually.
So is it like a 5-minute visualization exercise or something like that, or how can I imagine it?
It can be even shorter, actually. Sometimes it helps just close your eyes and really do that inside movement, and then you feel like, it's there, and it kind of fills you with a certain energy. And I really love that, because if you practice the tools for a while, I'm not an expert for the method, but this is what I experienced when you have really like experienced the impact of the little tools. It can take 30 seconds, and then you are in a different state. And so I really love those. And sometimes I practice them with my clients. There's one against procrastination, for example, and then you really close your eyes and you fly through a dark cloud, and then you go through the pain and you land in the land of endless possibility. I love the pictures that they create. So the tools book is really a great resource.
Oh, wow. I just thought, you were going to say, and you close your eyes and then you fly into, whatever task you're supposed to do, and you imagine yourself vividly and in every single detail as you're completing this task, because that's one of the tools I'm familiar with in functional imagery training, which is also used in sports psychology and so forth. But that is super interesting. I love it. Absolutely love it. And it sounds like it's true, as much, if the more you practice it, the more it becomes an instant anchor. So the quicker the results. You only do it for a few seconds, as you said, and you can reap sort of the results or feel the impacts already. It's wonderful, and I feel like it's so aligned with everything we know from positive psychology research as well. Is that whole idea of fear almost shutting off certain brain areas, not allowing you even to perform at your best. Whereas if you actively draw the curtain and you proactively look towards all your achievements and so forth, that's almost like a self-regulation or nervous regulation exercise to actually gain access to all of that knowledge and wisdom you already have. So yeah, I love it. I think I'm going to steal it. Just putting it out there.
Sure. Everybody knows now.
Yeah,
true.
absolutely.
Might get our editor to cut this bit.
No, you should not. You should not. You're officially, of course, giving the permission to do it.
We greatly appreciate you sharing the insights there too, and it does sound like a fascinating tool. Definitely one that I'm going to do some looking into post the conversation here. I'm just thinking of our listener base, and as they're listening to your stories and your experience as well, I'm wondering if you might be able to share with us, we probably have some people listening in that are probably struggling with a little bit of confidence themselves and, trying to figure out how do I feel more confident when I'm presenting or facilitating a workshop or speaking in front of a group of people or a pitch even. Do you have maybe like a gold standard bit of advice or tip that you might give to those listeners?
Yes, it's all about the body in the first moment, because I think confidence kind of grows within the body. And even I always say that voice starts with your feet. The way you stand your ground, the way you stand on a stage is defining how strong you can use your voice. And so I think like fear is telling our body to kind of escape, to run away or to freeze, like the mechanisms that we know. And so fight, flight or freeze, right? These are the three. And then we actually kind of allow the body to react that way. And I always tell my people, do the opposite. When you want to crunch and hide, expand. When you want to run, stand. When you want to breathe fast, breathe slowly. And so it's always like, remember to do the opposite of what your body kind of dictates you to do, because then you can actually have an impact fighting against that mechanism. And, even when I see people expanding and they feel safe, just because they expand, and so easy, but we don't think about it really. And so when we have stage fright, obviously we want to kind of get away and run away and be nervous. And so expanding, having slow movements in the body, so that will really do the first moment and calm you down for the first like 3-4 minutes. And so that and breathing is so essential. You can use your breath in any given moment to navigate yourself. So this is like a very concrete tool to calm down your nervous system. So whenever you feel like, okay, I'm getting very nervous before a presentation, you should actually breathe out. People tend to say, take a deep breath. But this is so wrong, because when I take a deep breath and I'm already nervous, so I use my upper breathing areas. So I go like this, and it gets me even tighter in the body. So what I say to people, breathe out, let go of the air. And so the body can actually refill itself by, the flexibility in our bodies. So really breathe out and then let it flow in again. Breathe out and let it flow in. And then this is what calms us down. So body posture and breathing, this is like, it does miracles. And people they think it's too easy. No, it's not too easy. This is how we work.
Yeah, so true. And I love how you said your voice starts at your feet. How good is that? It's so true. And the other thing I was going to add was as well, I love the idea of expansion, becoming expansive. And you saying basically, take opposite action. So as we experience this fight or flight, freeze, fawn, whatever response, we tend to retract. But, taking the opposite action to that. And it's actually a tool from DBT, what is it called? Dialectical Behavioral Therapy or something like that. Taking opposite action. We can use it in so many different ways. Because you mentioned earlier on about procrastinating too. It is so good to get into a habit of learning to take opposite action, opposite to what we're inclined to do when we procrastinate or whatever. But we can use it in those tiny, seemingly insignificant moments to really train ourselves, or our willpower or whatever. And the other thing I was going to add was that you spoke about fight or flight, freeze response. The other response mechanism is the fawn response. And that is actually when we become a people pleaser. And that takes us back to the beginning of the conversation or the book you've read too, right? So
I also heard about flocking. Have you heard about flocking? But I was like in my head, and I was like, there's fawn and flocking, but I don't really remember what that is.
I've never heard of flocking. Karen, I don't even know what that means. Do you know? Is that similar to fawn, or is that... Oh, okay.
Well, you can then cut it out.
Okay. No, I will look it up.
Yeah, most definitely.
Super interesting.
Continue to be curious.
Yeah, and I love that you shared about, exhaling, making your exhale longer than your inhale, because it's a very effective tool to calm your nervous system. Personally, maybe I would love to pick your brain once more for having a shaky voice, perhaps, or shaking altogether. Is there, obviously, if you, extend your exhale, that's going to help calm your nerves, that's going to help with a shaky voice. But I don't know, do you use a particular tool to calm the voice, make it less shaky?
Yes, actually, when the voice is shaky, it's a matter of cooperation between the breathing out and the vocal cords that are in a certain stiffness. So they don't operate as well together. So I always say that breathing and the vocal cords, they should have like a love affair with each other. They really need to be connected. And so if you breathe out in a steady way and the vocal cords are relaxed, then they cooperate better. So it's a matter of loosening up the throat, actually. This is what I really teach first, because whenever we train the voice, it's not about getting louder in the first place. This is at least my approach to it. First of all, we need to relax the throat, because the nervous system also does that. It kind of closes this area up, because it's like the tiniest area in our body and it's very sensitive. We all know that, like the larynx is like, we don't really like to touch it, because it's like life-threatening to have this closed up. So the larynx in the first place was created to secure our lives. It was like a valve that really like closes up when we kind of were in danger to breathe in threatening things. So it closes up, so we get saved. So whenever we feel scared, the valve here closes up to secure us. which for the voice in opposite is really stupid, because we are scared and the voice closes up and then we're like, oh my God, it doesn't work. So we need to loosen that up and tell the body that we are not in a dangerous situation. So, expanding and all that makes the basis for the body to actually feel safe again. And then you relax the larynx. I do little shaking exercises where you can take your hand and really shake this strain away from your throat. Or you can really do that, shaking things off, like Taylor Swift says. Like shake the strain off your throat, and then you get into your fullest voice. It's not about like powering the voice like crazy, but really releasing the stiffness here from the throat, and then you get access to your true voice.
So interesting, and so true, and instantly, you can probably relate. I remember having watched one of your talks, and you spoke about that, the different types of voices we sort of get into as we're probably nervous, and like we speak in this high-pitched voice, or really with a restricted, throat or whatever. And all I remember is that you, in the end, you were like, now think of, eating a piece of chocolate, and like, what would you, how would you express how good it tastes or something? You go, chocolate. And now every time I think of you, instantly I think, chocolate.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's so true. I'm trying to keep that in the back of my mind. Yeah, it's so good because you can instantly then feel it and put yourself, because I don't know, I think for many people, the voice is not necessarily an instrument we work with consciously on a daily basis. So it just does whatever it does. I don't know. I'm one of those uncoordinated people. But so, thinking of that is like really helpful, because instantly you can put yourself into that better state and you can feel it, and it makes so much sense. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. And when we come back to the beginning of our talk, we talked about confidence. And it's interesting because confident people, they don't really care about their voices. They are strong from within, and then the voice kind of, whatever it does, it's fine. And so it's good when you're in a good state, then the voice, you wouldn't worry about that. That's fine. So, but if you don't feel confident enough in a certain situation, whether it was an interview or a stage presentation or whatever, you can go actively into confidence by at least sounding confident by releasing this here. And, working with your breath. And then at least you sound confident, even though sometimes it's fake it until you make it. But hey, this kind of, the body kind of believes it after a while. And then it's like, oh, I sound confident. That's really cool. So this is how it kind of works.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I feel as though we've been privy to a bit of a free coaching session here too, Monika, through some of our conversations, which I've very much enjoyed. I'm sure Micah has as well, and definitely our listeners also. The conversation's been incredibly insightful. You've given some great tips, tools and advice as well. I'm sure that our listeners are going to be a little bit curious to learn a little bit more about what's happening next for you. I know that Micah mentioned that you've got a latest book, Speak Up and Shine, which is very exciting. Do you want us to just give us a quick overview of the book and what inspired that book as well?
Well, going back also to the start when I, of my career, when I didn't feel confident and didn't raise my voice for myself, and I felt like during my coaching path, I felt like many women, especially in our society, don't raise their voices as much as men do. I wouldn't want to blame men because there's no use doing that, but empowering women to also be there and show up. This kind of really inspired me lately. So my latest book is about vocal empowerment, like connected to female empowerment, but vocal, like how can you train your voice from within? So I call it the inner soundtrack, which is our inner voices that we kind of listen to and obey in certain situations. So if my inner voice tells me to be quiet because I might sound stupid, then all of a sudden, of course, my outer voice, my outer soundtrack will stay silent. So it's always a connection from the inner voices and the outer voice, because they are really tightly connected. And so I'm working with women, and this is the approach that is in the book, that they should, listen and navigate to their inner voices, complementary to the techniques that I'm teaching. So the book is not so much about techniques. That was my first book. So it's more like the imposter voice and the self-doubt, the self-worth concepts that we have in our heads, conflict that we avoid and stuff like that. So how do we keep quiet, and how do we change that through, inner processes and also through behavior. And this is what I wrote, and I felt like really inspired and kind of empowered myself. I do remember to read need to remember to read my own books to actually follow that path as well, because it's, you need to practice it. You need to do it all over again and again, because, when you're a sensitive person, and when you tend to be in self-doubt, and when you tend to be in fear, it will never really completely go away. It's just how we are programmed. But you can constantly monitor it and act and, go with the fear. And I think that is a very, very important thing for all of us to do, to remember that it will be there. It will not be pushed away, but we need to work with it, whatever is there. And so the inner voices are so, so important.
Oh, it's such a beautiful piece.
Incredible. Absolutely. We need to work with it. Yeah. Absolutely love it. Monika, I am sure our listeners are going to want to follow your journey, maybe get in touch with you, maybe get some coaching, some speaking training or whatever. Where are the best places for them to find you and follow your journey?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram, for example, and also on my homepage. And this is, so you can always contact me through WhatsApp and really pop over a question, and I will happily answer it.
Amazing. And obviously we'll be sure to link to your homepage and your Insta, LinkedIn and so forth in the show notes as well. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, obviously they just need to head there. Monika, it's been so incredibly awesome to have you on the show. I feel very, very honored and privileged and very grateful. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Oh, wow. What an incredible conversation there. Monika, I don't know about you, Michael, but I just feel as though Monika is just filled with wisdom and experience. And I took so much from that conversation just around, my own ways of being when I'm sort of presenting and facilitating. It's a big part of what we do in our work, where we need to show up and be present. But there were so many great little tips in there. I don't know, what were your thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I think we mentioned this already, but it really felt like, we got a private coaching session a little bit from her. She certainly is so full of wisdom and knowledge and experience, because she's been in her own business for so long already, and she's so successful. So I feel really, honored that she shared her time with us. And it's exactly what you said. We can probably both relate to that. And I'm guessing many of our listeners too, because most of us have to give presentations or show up somewhere in social media, whatever. We're using our voice all the time, and we know exactly what it's like when we're nervous, isn't it? And our voice is shaking, and it's like such a giveaway. It reminds me almost like, how I'm doing Latin dance at the moment. It's like, if you're nervous and like your hands are sweaty, it's like you can pretend to be as confident as you want to be, but it's a dead giveaway, and your voice is just like that, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And it almost like, it takes me back when I was working in schools and sort of supporting new teachers coming into the profession and sort of like helping sort of mentor them a little bit. And, you kind of got to say to them, hey, you can't let the kids see your fear, because they'll smell it and they will just take advantage of it, and they will walk all over you. So there is something to be said about, portraying your confidence even whilst you're working it out. And I remember even when I first started facilitation work, I had a brilliant little sort of like coaching session in person with my boss at the time. And he did this little exercise where he was trying to pinpoint and find our little nervous tendencies. He gave us he said, you got 2 minutes to talk on a topic that I'm about to give you. And you just got to go. Anyway, I'll never forget it. The topic I got was Japanese cowboys. Right? Now, they don't exist, but I had 2 minutes to try and just make up a story about Japanese cowboys.
Yeah.
And
can we record a separate episode where you tell us that story?
Well, I've told this story a
Bonus
couple of times
episode.
now, so
Yeah.
I've got stories in my head already made up about Japanese cowboys, should I ever need to do this again. But, it was a great lesson for me around, how do I throw out confidence and how do I let other people know that I'm confident. And, of course, we don't always want to be faking it to make it. The notion behind this activity was to, be well versed in what it is that you want to talk about, but also still come across confident when you're a little bit unsure or you're navigating the way.
Yeah.
And I loved it. It was. I use that exercise all the time now when I'm helping people with public speaking. I don't give them that topic because I actually think it's a little bit cruel. But it is a great tool to help us, work out. What happens when we're nervous too, like identifying those things. And, Monika was talking about our breaths and, what we need to be doing. And, it's sort of, I think some of the advice that we've maybe been given previously is not really attuned with what is maybe best practice. So I think some of the insights that Monika shared was really lovely.
Yeah, so true. And I love that for her. She worked with the body, through the body to calm the mind, but also she talked about calming the mind and therefore, calming the body and how the two intersect. Absolutely love that, and so keen to read her book, Speak Up and Shine. Really need to add that to my list. And I guess, you just said before, fake it till you make it. And we talk about that so often. Something I'd much prefer is the face it till we make it. And I think that's more her approach. It's the whole idea of, recognizing and accepting that your voice is shaky, that you're nervous, that you maybe, are a little bit scared right now, you don't feel so confident, and working with that. And, one of the things that really stuck with me, also because it has to do much with her book that focuses on vocal empowerment for women, but also integrating the inner processes with behavioral changes. And it's about almost like metaphorically helping women find their own voice. But it's that whole idea of imposter syndrome, because how often do we feel like we're a fraud, we're inadequate, we're on stage now, we're supposed to give this talk about this particular topic, and really, do we really belong here, And I think it's such a common thing that occurs, especially amongst women and also minority groups, and we know this from research. In fact, there's one study I wanted to highlight. It's called Prevalence Predictors and Treatment of Imposter Syndrome, a systematic review. So it's a really nice quality piece of research that was only published in 2020, so not that long ago, by Bravata and colleagues. Happy to share the paper and the show notes, because it looked across 62 studies that all used validated instruments to measure imposter syndrome across a broad range of populations. So, adults, students, working professionals, academics, and so forth. And it showed exactly that in some of these studies, imposter syndrome was as prevalent as 82% across the study population, and especially in women and minority groups. So I think it's so important we address this. And I don't know about you, Karen, but the number of coaching clients that come into my practice because they feel as though, these are all high achievers and often women, and they just feel inadequate and like they're lacking that bit of confidence, and breaks my heart.
Yeah. And mine too. And it is a common theme that's sort of thread and woven into a lot of our conversations around, I've got to do a big presentation. Can we have a chat about it so I can, build a little bit of confidence and feel as though I'm going in with a bit of a plan of attack. And, often the tools are within, as Monika sort of explains. We just need a little bit of support and, bringing them out. And I feel so fortunate too. Like, I feel as though throughout my career, I've been exposed to so many incredible women that are just amazing public speakers. So it's great to be able to take those, I sort of bring them into my coaching conversations when I'm working with women, trying to find that confidence to be like, I can tell you so many great stories about these women that are just like kicking ass. Like, they get up and they throw out their, they are just there, they're present, they're in the moment, and they're having the time of their lives. And you can do that too. That can be you. You can be the next little success story that I'm sharing in, another conversation with somebody else.
Isn't it? That's fantastic because vicarious experience. So you giving the example of another woman sort of who's successful and so forth, that your coaching clients or whoever comes to you, a woman, will be able to relate to. We know that vicarious experience or, I think that's what we call it, isn't it? Is one of the key factors of improving your own self-efficacy. So your confidence in your own abilities to overcome obstacles, right? So super helpful, obviously, for your coaching clients. Very lucky. Love that you do that.
Yeah, I think it's just it's a really valuable practice for people to see and know other people that have been where they might have been and give them something to look forward to and or look up to, I guess, or aspire to be. We know this too, the importance of why there is important to be equal representation in the media and things like that of different ages, different races, different abilities being portrayed as being successful. We know how important that is for the development of not just children but also us as adults as well. I really love this, and one of the things that we're talking about in between the recording with Monika and this little section here was we spoke a little bit about efficacy and self-efficacy and how this links into our confidence and how it can be a super useful tool for enhancing our motivation and resilience and sort of like overall psychological well-being as well. And I think Monika really highlighted that beautifully through not just our conversation but like the work more broadly that she does.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with you. And on the downside, or in contrast to that, obviously feeling like an imposter, not having that self-efficacy or confidence or whatever, obviously we know from research has the exact opposite effect. So it increases our distress, increases our anxiety, depression, burnout, and what have you. So obviously and then you have all these chain reactions, negative impacts on your job satisfaction, on your work performance, on your sense of belonging and so forth. So obviously I'm not sure, how many of our listeners are really interested in reading these academic papers or even have access to databases to read them. But there's one book that on the imposter syndrome that I've absolutely loved and read a few years ago. It's called The Imposter Cure by Dr. Jessamine Hibbert. Subtitle is How to Stop Feeling Like a Fraud and Escape the Mind Trap of Imposter Syndrome. Because I'm bringing this up because I love how in this book Dr. Hibbert explains the whole cycle of imposter syndrome. So how I just said, you already feel like a fraud. Now you're on stage, it increases your anxiety even more. Therefore, you probably attribute that to the fact that you don't really belong on this stage, in fact. And we know that that's exactly how it happens. We as, imposter syndrome suffering people, and I count myself to that, definitely in the past, every now and then it pops its head up again. But I now feel empowered through this book to recognize this cycle and sort of break through it. So there's this cycle that this book, or Dr. Hibbert, explains really well, that we either, we feel like we're a fraud, then we're tasked with something, for example, preparing a presentation for something. And so we either cope now by over preparing or by procrastinating. And so that fuels our cycle. So, we're now asked to give a presentation. We feel like a fraud. We feel like we don't belong here. Therefore, we put so much effort into this, every single detail. We stay up late to perfect this presentation and so forth. Then we give the presentation and most likely we succeed, not only because we prepared so much, but also we probably did have a place on stage in the first place, because it's mainly high achievers suffering from imposter syndrome, right? But we now attribute the success of our presentation to, it's because I prepared so much. I had to prepare for this so much more than everybody else. And therefore, it reconfirms the fact that we didn't have a place there. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's so interesting to recognize that, because then we can stop over preparing if we want to, unless of course it does calm our nerves, but we most certainly can stop attributing our success just to the amount of preparation we did. And maybe in the interest of completeness here, just the other one that I mentioned in terms of the procrastinating. So our other coping mechanism is that we put it off we put the task off because it makes us so nervous, because we feel like this imposter. We're so anxious about it that we put the task off. We procrastinate to the last minute, and all of a sudden we pull an all-nighter, prepare this presentation, get onto stage, deliver. And again, we probably deliver well because we are already that high achiever and we did have a place on the stage. And then again, we attribute our success to, oh my gosh, well, I was lucky this time. So again, sort of attributing it to some external factor and a luck sort of instance here, and again, feeding our cycle. So, yeah, I've just found it incredibly helpful to recognize those thought patterns in myself.
Both really important to recognize, and I feel as though maybe you've had access to my diary over the last 10 years, because that sounds like exactly what you're just you're describing there. And I'd say that maybe there's been a transition from procrastinator to over preparer at different times, and with different work too. So that is incredibly interesting, and a really good recommendation too for our listeners as well. This was a really amazing conversation. I have taken, as I do with most of our conversations, taken so much away from this, but it has actually given me a couple really practical things to think about, with future facilitation work, but also some really insightful tips that I can bring into my coaching sphere as well. So I've really loved it, and we're currently sitting about halfway through the season here, which is really exciting, but we've still got a lot more to come, and I feel as though maybe it's worthwhile giving a little bit of a hint to our listeners as to what we might have coming up in the next episode. Well, I really like it. I'm a huge fan of our next guest because they very much appeal to one of the channels in which I like to receive information. There's a little bit of hint on my end, but do you want to drop any more clues as to who our next listener might be?
Well, he's absolutely amazing, has a big social media following. He quit the 9-to-5 in 2021, I think, to pursue his own career as a solopreneur, as a visual artist. And oh my God, we're both such fans, aren't we, of his artwork. It's amazing. Am I giving away a name at this point in time, or are we just teasing?
I think we leave him hanging.
Okay. All right, then. Cool. Tune in again next week. Well, thank you so much for listening. I think we'll just leave it there, and see you next week. Thank you for listening to today's show. We hope our conversation helped normalize the struggles so many of us face on the path to success. While on the outside things often look like sunshine and rainbows, this is rarely the experience for anyone behind the facade.
But instead of letting that demotivate you, we hope it does the exact opposite, to let it fuel you to keep pursuing your purpose and realize your potential. Just without the added burden of feeling inadequate, and a little more patience, some tips, and self-compassion instead. For further info, head to our website, flourishingunfiltered.com, and get in touch with us via our socials, @flourishingunfiltered.
Now, if you or someone you know is struggling with feelings of loneliness, low mental health, or suicidal thoughts, please know that there are people who care and treatments that can help. We've compiled some helplines for you in the show notes.
It's a wrap for Flourishing Unfiltered today. Please give us a follow and leave us a comment and a review. We hope you tune in next time.